How's it going? A couple of months ago, I wanted to buy an e-bike, so I went down to a local dealership to test out a bunch of different bikes, and there was one bike there in particular that was so much nicer than all of the others at its price point from a brand that I had certainly never heard of, and I think is either new or not great at marketing, but I really want to shout them out here. These are Favoritebikes, hybrid series of bikes. And man, this company, maybe not good at marketing, but really good at making an awesome e-bike. I have had this thing for a few months now, really love it, and I want to go over kind of the really interesting, cool features about them. I do have the Pro version here, and then I also have the not Pro version. This one also happens to be the step-through version, and this is the step-over version. I'm going to do a full comparison later in the video so you can see what's different between the two. But for right now, I'm going to kind of focus on talking about the Pro version because I think this is the one where they really absolutely knocked it out of the park. What really turned me on about this bike is that in comparing to a bunch of other e-bikes, it was the one that was just the most reasonable and had the best overall experience at the price point. It feels like just one sort of holistic experience on an e-bike. A lot of those other e-bikes that I tried out, they just felt like they all had kind of one weird gimmick that I didn't really like, or they were just had some feature that they were just trying to build in. Oh, we want the e-bike that has the fast acceleration, but we don't care about battery life, or we care about having huge tires and we don't care about its portability. And I think that these e-bikes really knocked it out of the park with having the best assortment of features that works well together as one sort of experience. This is, I think about these bikes as kind of like the iPhones of e-bikes, and I really do mean that. By the way, these came in at $19.99 for the Pro version, at least at the time that I bought it. It was on, I think, like a $500 discount or something. And then the non-Pro version, I think, is $15.99, something like that. But yeah, let's just jump through some of the cool features that I found on this bike. Okay, let's start out with this really interesting display here. It is, you'll notice, integrated with the frame of the bike. Really cool. To turn this thing on, you have an RFID key that you just touch here. It unlocks, it boots up, and now you have this really gorgeous display. It has a speedometer on it. You can change the assist levels. It'll tell you the real-time wattage of the bike as you're going. You can basically track how many miles you're going, and then this is the total amount that I've used this bike, almost 500 miles thus far. I also really love that this bike has an integrated front headlight, which seems like not that big of a deal, but it's amazing how many bikes I find out there that have a giant battery in them, but they expect you to put your own front LED light on that you have to like charge separately. It just feels a little silly to me. So I'm really glad that they integrated that in there. Not only that, but this is an automatically adjusting light. So if you're like going into a tunnel or something like that, it goes from daylight, the lights are off. As soon as you get into the tunnel, it detects the darkness and the lights will immediately kick on. So that is super cool. Another interesting feature about this bike that you don't really see very many other places, and by the way, I did add on a lot of different components here. So the water bottle holder I added, obviously the lock. I added the fenders and the rack here. The fenders and the rack are both from Favoritebikes, but just note that this does not come stock on the bike. What does come stock is this cafe lock, as it's called. So theoretically, if you're like going into a coffee shop, you're just grabbing cappuccino or whatever, you can lock up your bike so that somebody can't just like ride away with it. They would have to throw it in the back of a pickup truck or something. And then when it's time to unlock it, you just take your same RFID and you tap it to turn it on, and this thing automatically opens. So super cool little feature there. It is pretty useful to just pull it out. This is the only e-bike that I've seen that has this feature, but I mean, yeah, look at just how sleek and beautiful this thing is. The battery is integrated to the frame, and the battery, by the way, is a really solid battery. I mean, the size is pretty comparable to other e-bikes that I've seen, but the battery chemistry of it itself is quite good. That is one benefit the Pro version has over the not Pro version, is that it's using a higher density, energy density lithium battery on there. So that's really amazing. I also think that the other thing that they did really well here is that they chose a really good size of tire. You find these e-bikes that have these massive fat tires on it, and it just feels like complete overkill. And I don't know, I'm just not a fan of a giant fat tire experience, but I think that this is sort of the perfect middle ground where I think, okay, so this is like 2 inches, but this size of tire will let you go out off-roading. You feel really sturdy and solid on the bike. It'll absorb a lot of shocks. but not at the expense of having a bunch of drag, having extra friction on the ground, and making it really hard to pedal when you're not using the e-bike capabilities. The other thing I really loved about this bike is that it worked phenomenally without even having any of the battery assist on it. So the other day I went on an 80-mile bike ride with this thing because 20 of those miles I was able to just pedal it myself, no problem. And I've had friends test this thing out, and even with the e-bike mode off, they're like, man, this is a really solid bike. Just all the components and everything on this thing are just really high end. I'm sure you want me to talk about the motor too. So this is a direct drive hub motor, which, there are benefits to doing it in, maybe this is hub. I'm getting confused. Anyway, the ones where the motor is here and then it actually uses the chain to drive is a different style, and there are benefits to that. This direct drive style in the hub of the wheel does offer its own benefits. Honestly, the motor is solid, no complaints. I don't think there's anything particularly amazing about this motor. It is really quiet. It seems to be really efficient, but it's not the fastest accelerating motor that I've seen. This bike does have some pretty solid acceleration, but it's certainly not built to be just an absolute powerhouse. It's more built to be a good overall biking experience. They also added plenty of quality of life features to it. So they have, a kickstand, obviously. They added in a seat post suspension bit here, which is really nice. On the Pro version, you have hydraulic brakes, super, super good. A Shimano gear set. All of the things that just make for a really smooth, overall great riding experience. Also, you may be wondering what these little doodads are. They're actually little water sprayers. I converted my bike modified it to have a little misting system integrated in it, and I have a water reservoir here in the back, and then a little pump that circulates the water and pumps it down through the frame, up over here, and then to water misting system, so I can keep myself nice and cool in the summer. A little silly, but yeah. So what do I wish that they did better on this bike? Well, there are a couple of things. First thing I'll say, and I hope that Favoritebikes sees this and gets my feedback here. So number one is that I think that the assist level 1 is a little bit too high for the lowest assist level. I kind of wish that there was an in-between 0 and 1, so a 0.5 assist level. I find that, after I added a bunch of weight onto the bike with the fenders and the rack and my silly water canteen in the back and everything, that assist level 1 does turn this into mostly what a normal bike would feel like, without all this extra weight. But it's so if I look back at this bike though, it feels like the assist level 1 on this is way too much. I kind of wish there was a lot less, and there might be an engineering reason why they had to do that the motors can only accept a certain minimum current or something like that. Not too sure, but that would be cool if that was improved. The other thing I really wish these bikes had, so I told you I really loved that there's an integrated front light. Unfortunately, these do not ship with an integrated backlight. This one I did install a backlight that does connect to the battery, but that is not included, separate deal. And so this one, this non-pro version, didn't come with any of that. So, don't love that. I kind of wish that was integrated in here, but not the biggest deal in the world. Also, the seat is medium comfortable on the Pro version. It's not the most comfortable seat I've ever used. The seat post suspension does help a lot. And on the non-Pro version, the seat is pretty uncomfortable, I'll be honest with you. Let's see here. Okay, last thing, I kind of wish there were more screw points on the Pro step over version. So as you can see, I integrated a water bottle holder right here using the 2 screw points. There's no screws on this section. I kind of wish there were screws there too. That's okay, I ended up just using these band clamps to attach my lock to it. So that's not the biggest deal in the world. But yeah, honestly, that's all of the complaints I really have about this bike. I had to think for 10 minutes about what nitty-gritties could I complain about, and there's not really a lot, to be honest. Okay, time for the comparison portion. There are 2 things that are different about these 2 bikes. So number 1 is that this is the Pro version. This one is not the Pro version. This one is a step over. This one is a step through. So I'll go over step through versus step over first. Obviously, the step over, you have this bar on the frame of the bike. which you have to step over. But the other thing that's not immediately clear is that the shape of the handlebars is different. So this one has a straight-ish shaped handlebar, whereas this one has a little bit more of a curvy style to it. So I personally prefer the straight handlebar style. My brother, when he was testing these bikes too, he said he preferred this one, so your mileage is probably gonna vary. I do recommend that if you have one available, go to a dealership, and if you can, try out both bikes and see what works better for you. But otherwise, I mean, that's really the only differences between the bikes. The frame size of the step through is a little bit smaller, I believe, so this is a little bit more of a beginner-friendly bike, so if you have somebody that's not as experienced with bicycles, they're going to be way more comfortable on the step-through version. I mean, I have been biking a while, so I don't mind the step over. But yeah, that's about it for the differences between step-through versus step-over. So now differences between the Pro versus the not Pro, and there are quite a few differences here. The price difference is about $400 or $500 last time I checked, I believe. But it really comes down to specific components on the bikes. So first thing you'll notice is that the tires are slightly different. The treads, like looking at it in a video, you're like, okay, how are you supposed to know which one is better? I can just tell you from experience riding this that the Pro version for some reason feels way better, and I trust it way more. So I was taking this thing on some like kind of BMX type paths, and this one, the Pro version wheels, I felt great on. I felt super confident going around tight bends and everything. But when I took the non-Pro version, it was definitely slipping and skidding around. So it was a little sketchy, not gonna lie, and I'm not gonna do that again on that bike. Next up, we have hydraulic brakes on the Pro version. So this literally has hydraulic fluid that goes down to disc brakes. This is my first time actually ever having hydraulic brakes, but they're pretty amazing. I like them quite a lot. They're just much more responsive, and you can impart quite a bit more force onto the brakes. Feels much more like a premium experience. And on the non-Pro version, you just have traditional mechanical wire-driven brakes, but you still do have a disc brake, which is phenomenal. Moving on, the gear sets are also different. So this one has a Shimano gear set that looks like this. I don't know the name of it. And it is just higher quality feeling than this one on this bike. Honestly, though, not that big of a difference in actual usability. Next up, we have the handlebar grips, I should say, are a little bit different. So this one is a different shape, and it doesn't feel quite as high quality. The Pro version has a much more high quality front grip. I mean, the material just feels really, really good. The battery is also another huge difference. So the Pro version has a better battery chemistry, a higher capacity battery chemistry, and then the not Pro version has sort of a less expensive lithium battery. So what does it actually do to impact your riding experience? Well, the Pro version, me and my brother went and tested out both these bikes at the same time. We went, I think, about 40 miles. This bike, and actually let me just turn them on and we can take a look at what the actual battery percentages are here. So this one is still at 52% after like a 40-mile bike ride, and we weren't being particularly conservative with the battery life on this. And we turn this one on, and it's at 42%. So not a huge difference, but also consider that the Pro version, I put so much more weight on this bike. This one is pretty significantly lighter. So that battery is better. I also think that the motor has something to do with it. I think that the motor on the Pro version is different and it's more efficient. When you look at the wattage readouts, the wattage is lower on the Pro version when you seem to be going the same speed as on the not Pro version. Also, a huge difference that I can't point to is that the Pro version has a torque sensor. So essentially, when you're getting pedal assist on this bike, you step down on the pedals and it basically figures out how hard you're pushing on the pedals, and then it determines how much power to send to the motors. And so this makes it so that it matches how much effort you're putting into the bike. And if I didn't tell somebody that they were riding an e-bike and they didn't know, they might just not know, even if it is powering them, because of how smooth and seamless it feels within the experience. Whereas on the non-Pro, it has what's called a cadence sensor. So this just simply sees that you're rotating the pedals, and it'll just basically either decide to send power to the motor or not send it. So there's no variability in how much power is getting sent to it. So you can tell that it really lurches on and lurches off, depending on if you're cranking or not. And the quality of life difference between a torque sensor and a cadence sensor is pretty significant. And it's just something you kind of have to feel for yourself once you ride the bike. That being said, I still think that the non-pro version is quite a nice bike. The experience still feels quite seamless, quite good. And if you're like brand new to bicycles or you're extra price sensitive, I don't think that you're going to be unhappy getting this non-pro version of the bike. That being said, if you are able to, the pro version, I mean, it is worth it. It is definitely worth it. If you have the money, you're not going to regret getting the pro version of the bike. Okay, one last thing I think I forgot to talk about is that these are class 3 e-bikes, meaning that you can go up to 32 miles an hour on these puppies. And I have definitely done that on roads where it is legal. If you're on bike paths, in most jurisdictions, you're not allowed to have it more than a class 1 mode. What I do like about these bikes is that you can change the assist level and put it in commuter mode, which limits it to that level 1 e-bike experience. But if you want to unthrottle it and get a little wild, totally pretty easy to get to 32 miles an hour. Okay, I probably forgot a lot. There's a lot of different little details on these bikes, but I hope this review was helpful for you. Again, great job, Favoritebikes, on making these. These are pretty amazing bikes, and I've been super happy with mine, and I think most of your customers are going to be absolutely thrilled with these bikes as they're riding them. So yeah, if you're looking to get a favorite bike, I definitely recommend it. Anyway, you've watched the review. I like these things a lot. Okay, take care.